There we go. Here I am. Boy, that was a long delay. Hello, it's Bryan Barron. I'm going to wait and put my glasses on in a minute. Director of Skincare Research at Paula's Choice Skincare. It is Thursday, January 16th. I had to cheat and look at my computer doc there because I don't know if you're like me when you get into January after all of the US year-end holidays and the merriment and the socializing, and January just seems to be like this blur where you're never quite sure what date it is. You might know the day of the week, but when someone says, "What's the date today?" you're pulling out your phone or looking at your calendar. So here we are on January 16th for today's live chat, and the topic is going to be vitamin C. I've got some questions, just like I did for the Retinol show. I got some questions from our social media team. The questions that seem to come up the most often on social about vitamin C. So I will be getting to those, but pop that over there. Welcome. And I wanted to share with you guys some if you're a Paula's Choice VIP, you may already know about this, or if you follow us on Instagram, you may have noticed something. But we have a new product launching on January 21st, so next week. It is our clinical 20% niacinamide treatment. Very, very excited about this launch. It is, we love niacinamide. We've been using it for quite some time. This formula is incredible. It is $48 at retail. I believe our current niacinamide booster is $42. Let me just double check that to make sure. 44. So the 20% formula is a few dollars more. I wanted to share with you, when the product launches, you guys can go to the site and read all the details about it there. But I wanted to give you a bit more of the backstory about how this product came to be. And it really started with Paula. Even though the brand name is Paula's Choice, not every product we make is something that Paula wants or Paula has requested. She definitely has a role in the development process. We talk about ingredients, we talk about texture, but given the size of our line, no single person should be using every single product. It just doesn't make sense. We have too many. They're for different skin types, different concerns. This product, the niacinamide 20% treatment, which is in this cool purple glass bottle with a dropper applicator, again, launches January 21st. This product was something that Paula asked our lab to make. We actually have a fully functioning lab at our home office, our headquarters in Seattle, and chemists who work for us. We also work with outside chemists and outside labs. But this one was something that we did in-house, and Paula wanted to see if a higher amount of niacinamide would be a better option for some of her more stubborn concerns, particularly around flesh-colored bumps that can be very, very just hanging on there. These are the bumps. I'm not referring to milia. I am referring to those crater-like bumps. By crater, I mean like there's like a flesh-colored bump, and then you have like an almost crater-like donut-type hole in the center that has to do with part of the sebaceous gland aging. Part of it's passage of time, intrinsic aging. Part of it is extrinsic aging due to sun damage and the negative effect that ongoing exposure to UV light has on the sebaceous gland itself. So she said, "Hey, some of you may know Paula's a huge fan of the original 10% booster. The 20% formula was modeled after that, but we did add some different. There's some different ingredients in the clinical 20% that aren't in the 10%, and vice versa. However, those of you who love the 10% niacinamide booster will notice that the 20% treatment, it does have a slightly different texture and feel. It's still very sheer. It's still silky. It still layers really well, but it is not what I'm trying to get at is that we didn't just take the 10% formula and reduce the water by 10% so we could give you 10% more niacinamide. But the goal with this product, along with dealing with those stubborn oil-related flesh-colored bumps, was to also create something where our hypothesis was that 20% niacinamide, along with the supporting ingredients we chose that are unique to this formula, would also have a remarkable effect on what happens to pores as we get older and if we've accumulated more sun damage. Because essentially what happens to pores can become enlarged for a number of reasons. If you notice, if you haven't had a huge problem with clogged pores in your younger years, but you notice as you get into your 40s, 50s, and beyond, that your pores are getting bigger and they almost seem like they're stretched, or even that they're starting to sag, chances are that is exactly what's happening, and it is how the pore responds when skin support system, namely collagen and elastin, start to degrade and become less firm and flexible due to environmental damage. So what we were hoping that niacinamide would do is stimulate some amount of collagen repair, bring about some more renewed elasticity, and as that support system beneath the skin was shored up and made stronger, the pore that had started to sag a bit, almost take on like a teardrop shape, if you will start to go back to its original shape. It's not going to go all the way back. I mean, I know you probably heard Paula say you can't completely undo the damage, but what we were hoping is that a product like this would really, really help. And Paula is thrilled with it. I don't know 100% if she stopped using the 10% niacinamide booster and just started using this, but I suspect that was the case because this product is really more for advanced concerns around bumps, clogs, pores, skin tone, and that beginning signs of laxity that can happen from environmental damage and how that affects the pores. Are we getting rid of the 10% niacinamide booster? Oh no. No. That is really more of, I guess you say, the intermediate product. It's still a brilliant option if you don't have more advanced concerns that what I was just speaking of. We don't normally segment our products by age because, simply put, age isn't a skin type. What you're dealing with in your 20s could be exactly what somebody is dealing with who is 20 years older than you or 30 years older than you. There are a lot of factors that go into what's happening to your skin at a given age, and some are within your control, some are not. Having said that, the 10% niacinamide booster, I would recommend that more for someone who's in their 20s to early 40s, and I'm looking at this clinical product as for somebody who is 40 plus and who has a history of unprotected sun exposure. Maybe you used to tan a lot and you're starting to see, while that tan looked beautiful and gorgeous in your 20s, now you're starting to see some of the effects that cumulative sun damage has had on your skin, and specifically how it's affecting your pores. The clinical 20% is exactly for you. It doesn't mean that you can't use it if you aren't there yet in terms of advanced concerns, because I know a lot of you are going to be curious. I've been using it off and on. I think I haven't been using the final finished formula long enough to really see, come to the conclusion that I think it's better for me than the 10%. I've been using it in place of the 10% niacinamide booster just a few times a week. I love how it feels. At this point, though, I think I'm kind of getting equivalent results, but I'm not the ideal customer for this product. I don't necessarily, not even necessarily, I don't have all those concerns yet. And maybe I won't because I've been using the 10% niacinamide booster. So, let's just taking a quick look at the questions here. Got some vitamin C questions going. Cool. So anyway, if you have questions about the niacinamide booster, feel free to post them here. The clinical niacinamide 20% treatment. You can ask me about any of the niacinamide products. But today's main topic is going to be vitamin C, the citrus vitamin, although we don't recommend you get vitamin C from any citrus ingredients because topical use of those can be irritating. So I wanted to dive in before I discuss, let me pull up those questions. Quick overview about vitamin C and skin. Vitamin C is one of the chief antioxidants that helps protect skin. It becomes part of your skin's antioxidant system via your diet, eating vitamin C rich foods on a regular basis, and or taking in some amount of vitamin C via supplements. The human body cannot synthesize or make vitamin C on its own, so we have to obtain it from foods or from supplements. However, what is obtained does become part of the skin's endogenous antioxidant system. So along with antioxidant enzymes like the glutathione and superoxide dismutase and glucose, it's on and on in that regard. It works with them to protect your skin, the first line of defense, if you will, from environmental damage. Vitamin C is known as ascorbic acid. That is still the ingredient that a lot of cosmetic companies use in skincare products designed to treat uneven skin tone, loss of firmness, wrinkles, discolorations. Vitamin C is one of those widely praised and heavily researched skincare ingredients. We know a lot about it. We know a lot about how it works. There really aren't any restrictions in terms of who can use it. It isn't a situation where if you start using a vitamin C serum at a younger age, then it won't work when you really need it later on. It's nothing like that. Your skin will not get used to it. It is an antioxidant, as I mentioned, a very good one. It can help, get that off the screen. Vitamin C has been shown in quite a few studies. These are animal studies where it's put on animal skin to help skin better defend itself in the presence of UV light, even if you are not wearing a sunscreen. Very exciting. That does not replace a sunscreen, but rather it works with a sunscreen to offer a different type of protection. One of the things that it does in skin is that it helps quench or reduce the inflammatory molecules or chemicals that are generated in response to UV light. Those are typically known as ROS, or reactive oxygen species. Vitamin C is very good at quenching those reactive molecules. It will either help them to become more stable, or it helps to diffuse them before they can continue on this cascade of damage where they find another intact molecule, steal a part of it because it needs it, but then that molecule that it stole from then becomes reactive, and there's your cascade, there's your cycle. So vitamin C plays kind of a dual role in that sense. In the skincare realm, outside of ascorbic acid, that which is widely considered ascorbic acid or L-ascorbic acid, they are interchangeable. They are widely considered the most effective forms, primarily because they are the most bioavailable to skin. They're what I would call a skin natural ingredient, whereas you put it on the surface of your skin, and as it penetrates, and you want a good delivery system, like a glycol, for example, to take the vitamin C a little further into skin. Your skin recognizes it and knows what to do with it. You know, that's why I call it skin natural, or if you will, skin friendly. What else to say about? Just to wrap on ascorbic acid, in spite of the fact that it is the most researched form of vitamin C for topical use, it is also the most unstable. It requires a lower pH in order to be most effective, most potent, typically a pH between 2 and 3, with 3 being considered ideal in terms of tolerability on skin. Skin is naturally acidic, but there is a big difference going from a pH of 3 to a pH of 2 in terms of irritation for skin. Consider that lemon juice has a pH of 2, and even though lemon and its juice is a source of vitamin C, the acid, the acidic nature, the very strong acidic nature of lemon juice is just too irritating for skin. If you've ever gotten a little bit of lemon juice in a paper cut that normally doesn't bother you at all, you're just like, it's just kind of an annoyance, but you get some lemon juice or really any citrus juice inside of that, and ow, it hurts. There are numerous other forms of vitamin C that are used in skincare products. Some are riffs on ascorbic acid, some which is water soluble, some are fat soluble forms of vitamin C, like ascorbyl tetroisopalmitate, tetrahexyl diesel ascorbate, which I know we get asked about sometimes. I'm going to get into the questions here that we've called from social. I think what's most important, the take-home message, is that there is, separate from ascorbic acid, which I believe, even with its formulary limitations, if you're using a well-formulated ascorbic acid product, that's probably like the top of the heap, so to speak. However, because even in the best formulas, that ingredient may still have stability issues throughout the use of the product, and you'll notice that by the formula discoloring. Maybe it started out like a straw color, and then a month later it's starting to become like a rust color. That's the vitamin C going bad. You don't want to keep using that product. Well, it's not necessarily going to hurt your skin, but you're not really getting any more vitamin C benefit from it. So almost all of the alternatives have better stability, but not all of them have great affinity for skin. They have their own set of limitations. So all of that boils down to the fact that there isn't really a best form of vitamin C for skin. What I encourage people to do is to try products with different forms of vitamin C, many of them, such as our clinical ceramide enriched facial moisturizer, as well as its counterpart eye cream, utilize different types of vitamin C, so you're making sure you're getting each one's benefits. They kind of work together and form a nice little synergy. Let's see, getting to the questions. The best time to use vitamin C, AM or PM, or AM versus PM. In terms of how your skin handles it and what it can do for your skin, I don't necessarily think it's really, you can do both if you want. There is not a hard and fast rule here. There are, as I mentioned earlier, there are studies showing that vitamin C is a brilliant antioxidant to put on your skin when you know you're going to be exposed to UV light, which for all of us is, if we're going outside during the day, sitting by a window, it can really help in that regard. However, it can also help at night. It plays a reparative role in the skin around the clock. And the skin tends to accumulate vitamin C. It can build up a reservoir. That's one of the reasons I think the oil-soluble forms like tetrahexyl diesel ascorbate can be more interesting, because they're stored in different places in the skin and used up at different rates, which can be interesting because ultimately they all have the same type of benefit for skin. Skin tone, dark spots, firmness, wrinkles, fine lines. I just generally find that using a vitamin C product makes my skin look younger and healthier all over. So in my experience, there isn't one visible benefit that I would ascribe to vitamin C is like, oh, that's the amazing thing that vitamin C does, just that one thing. It's just kind of, it's everything. It's kind of, and in many ways, it's like niacinamide in terms of it just having all this talent that your skin can take advantage of. And then the other question, because I kind of went over the different types of vitamin C and that there isn't a best, you'll often see brands touting their forms as the best, the most stable, the most potent. There's pros and cons to each of them. There really are. But I truly, from everything I've seen in the research, there is not a bad vitamin C. There's not a vitamin C out there in skincare that's going to hurt your skin or that's going to interact negatively with other ingredients you may be using that are considered bioactive. So from the consumer side of things, when you're shopping, that you don't have to have that worry in mind. The other question was niacinamide versus vitamin C when it comes to brightening and overall skin tone, which one is better? I would encourage you, if you have issues around uneven skin tone, dullness, and dark spots, post-breakout marks included, I would say use both. And you can use them at the same time. They do not deactivate each other. The information floating around about that was a misinterpretation of dated 1960s, if I'm not mistaken, research that was looking at how those two substances acted when mixed together, with no other nothing done to stabilize either one of them per se. We know a lot more about both ingredients today than we did in the 1960s. I wasn't even born yet. I'd have to go back and look at the exact date on that research. I was going to make a comment about Beatlemania and if that had even happened yet, but I don't know the exact date on the study. But suffice to say, it is perfectly fine to use vitamin C and niacinamide at the same time within the same product or layering products. They have a complementary benefit. So my honest answer, and I'll always give you guys the honest answer, when it comes to which one is better for skin tone issues, which was, brightening, I think it's largely subjective. And to some extent, it can depend on how your skin responds. So if you aren't already using one or the other, my advice would be to pick one to start with and see after give it 4 to 6 weeks of at least once daily use, see how your skin tone is doing, what kind of improvement you get. For niacinamide, you'll want to use at least a 5% concentration to really see meaningful improvement in skin tone. For a vitamin C product, if we're talking ascorbic acid, which is pretty easy to find in lots of vitamin C treatment products, I would look for at least a minimum of 10%. Other forms of vitamin C, like the THD, tetrahexyl diesel ascorbate, you can go about 3 to 5% for those. And there's even some interesting research on another water-soluble form of vitamin C known as ascorbyl glucoside, that amounts of around 2% can help with uneven skin tone. That's what we're using in both of the niacinamide treatment products. See, we're putting vitamin C and niacinamide in the same product. Okay, let's get to your questions. Let's see what's on your mind. And bumping up to the top here, starting with Starvos. I think I answered this question, Starvos. You're asking which derivative do I think is the most proven to work? THD gets a lot of press, and I actually think it's a rather impressive form of vitamin C, but if you look into the independent scientific research on it, it's surprisingly lacking. There isn't a whole lot to go on. I think 3-O-ethyl ascorbic acid, which is a newer, more stable, much more light stable form of vitamin C, I think that's an intriguing form. There's ascorbyl tetraisopalmitate. There is ascorbyl glucoside that I mentioned. Glyceryl ascorbate will show up. Sodium, we use that one. Sodium ascorbyl phosphate, which we use. And again, there's pros and cons to each one, enough so that pros, cons, limitations. They all have their strong points. They all have their, but then there's this. Except, just to be clear, the but then there's this part does not apply. I'm not talking about ingredient interactions, other products you can't use with this form of vitamin C, whereas this form of vitamin C is perfectly fine to use with anything. I've never seen any research showing that, modern research at least, showing that the way skincare products are formulated these days, that you can't use those two vitamins at the same time. Andrea says, since the best vitamin C products are low pH for better absorption, this applies to the best ascorbic acid vitamin C products. There are several other forms of vitamin C, particularly the fat-soluble ones that we were talking about a moment ago, the THD, for example, that aren't necessarily pH dependent, or they have a wider pH range that they can be used in and still maintain their efficacy, whereas ascorbic acid, once you get much past pH of 3, if it is a water base, then that's when you start to lose some efficacy and some potency. It's kind of like what happens with salicylic acid or glycolic acid. So what is the rest of your question? Is there a certain amount of time one should wait before applying other treatments to avoid changing the pH and lessening its effect? Good question, and the answer is no. You don't have to wait. Why is that? What it takes to change the pH of this product is not applicable to the small amounts we use when we put them on our skin. the ingredients that are used in skincare formularies to establish and hold a product's pH, particularly if it is more of an acidic pH, those are pretty strong ingredients and they are very good at what they do. And it takes a lot of another substance to significantly alter the pH. I'll give you an example. We've done tests in our lab where we take our skin perfecting 2% BHA liquid, which is one of our BHA exfoliants. It is our global bestseller. We call it the gateway drug to Paula's Choice, because once you try that product and see how well it works for you, you are pretty much guaranteed to come back and say, well, what else does this Paula's Choice brand have to offer? They seem to be onto something. And I love it when people have that reaction, because I'm very proud of all the products that we have. And we are, of course, more than just that one exfoliant. But I digress. So in the lab, we took the 2% BHA liquid and we poured an entire bottle into a glass beaker. We stuck our pH meter, our digital pH meter in, which is a much more sophisticated tool than the paper pH strips you can get on Amazon, for example. And then, so we established the pH of that exfoliant, which I believe was 3.2. Anything between pH 3 and pH 4 is ideal for a BHA, salicylic acid, to be effective, to exfoliate, to have that keratolytic action. Next, we started adding water. We took tap water, like we started with a gallon of it, and we started dumping the tap water into the large glass beaker with the 2% BHA. Over a gallon of tap water barely made a blip in the pH. So even though the tap water had a pH of, I think it was around like 6.9, 6.8, obviously far above where the BHA exfoliant is, it didn't really move the needle. So unless you are you literally have to just dump gallons of something else that's a very different pH onto your skin in order to significantly alter the pH of what you put on. So I'm glad I was able to weave in that story. It's a very good question. A lot of people have that worry. You do not have to wait. The only reason to wait is if you find that the vitamin C product you're using, or the BHA or whatever it is, it plays better with other products when you give it a moment or two, 5 minutes, whatever, to absorb, versus moving on to your next product where you find that because the one you put on before hasn't completely set yet, and when those two mix together in more of their wet state, they don't play well. You might get some rolling or pilling. It just may not feel as nice. I'll do that with some of our products. I'll typically in my nighttime routine, when I'll cleanse, tone, and exfoliate, and then as I'm waiting for my exfoliant to set, I will brush my teeth. And then by the time I'm done brushing my teeth, I move on to the rest of my skincare routine, and then finish the rest of my flossing and all that fun stuff. So, but it's not because I have to. It's not because what I'm going to put on next isn't going to work or work as well. It is strictly personal preference, because I find that I like the way the products layer and feel when I do it that way. Okie dokie. Moving on. David asks, has your skin always been this great? No. Oh my God, no. What's been your worst skin days? Why were they bad? How did you save your skin? Oh my gosh. I don't want to go on too long about this, but I will say I have been very, very happy with my skin pretty much since I got started with Paula's Choice almost 20 years ago. Prior to working for Paula's Choice, I worked for various other cosmetic lines, either in skincare consultant, makeup artist. I was a big fan of Paula's all along, so I was always aware of what she thought about any of the products that I worked with. There was no Beautypedia back then, but I had dog-eared copies of her books that I would literally keep at work. My coworkers didn't like that, because a lot of the times I wouldn't sell products that they would sell, or I would tell the customer something different. I would tell the customer the truth, and therefore I got more clients, because people are like, I trust this guy. he's obviously not just trying to make commission or get me to buy something I don't need, which was absolutely what I was going for. Anyway, I just rounding this out, I spent a good part of my teen years with breakouts, with I came of age in an era when tanning was still the norm. I don't tan very well. I'm a burn than tan person, so my attempts at trying to make my skin darker in the sun, this is before I knew any better, would typically result in a lot of freckles. So I went through a phase where I had freckles and acne and clogged pores all at the same time. I was starting to shave, which can be its own disaster for guys. Yeah, I went through a long period where I just was not happy with how my skin looked, but that rather than I mean, I spent my time wallowing in it, but rather than let it consistently get me down, I chose to see what I could do about it. And that is what led me to find Paula's books. This was after a lot of trial and error and a lot of money spent on trying to find the right skincare products for me. I was, and this was in an era where it really wasn't the norm for young men, or even older men for that matter, to want to take care of their skin, which I always just found so bizarre. The whole notion that skincare is segmented by gender roles and expectations, and that it's normal for a woman to want to take care of her skin and keep it healthy, but guys are just supposed to tough it out and not really do much of anything, and profess not to care about it. And I just knew when you have skin problems, which I was dealing with many of them, you sit around and do nothing and they're not going to get any better, or they may even get worse. For example, rosacea, not something I'm dealing with, but if you do not do anything about your rosacea to manage the symptoms and to keep it from progressing, it will get worse. Just like arthritis will get worse if you don't make any lifestyle changes, potentially get on different medications to stop the progression of the joints becoming very, very damaged. And yeah, it's the same principle. So I appreciate the compliment, David. I work really hard at keeping my skin in good shape. And they say with, you become more comfortable with yourself and how you look as you get older. And in my mid 40s now, that's absolutely true for me. I'm much more comfortable with myself than I was even 10, 15 years ago. It's a journey, isn't it? It really is. But thank you. Sandra says, if your skin can't handle vitamin C, what is a good alternative antioxidant product to use? Oh, there's lots. There's lots. And it may, again, because there's so many different types of vitamin C, I wouldn't necessarily give up on it. There's always another one you can try, and then it could also have something to do with concentration. Maybe your skin can't handle higher amounts of vitamin C, but lower amounts, depending on the form of vitamin C, can still be effective. Even lower amounts of ascorbic acid can be effective in an antioxidant capacity. So you may not see the wrinkle improvement, the dark spot improvement, the skin tone improvement with a lower amount of ascorbic acid, but you'll still get the antioxidant benefit that ingredient provides, assuming you're using a well-formulated product, not in a jar, no clear packaging. Vitamin C as ascorbic acid does not like light or air. But there's too many to list in terms of alternatives. In fact, one of the ones that we are using in the new clinical 20% niacinamide treatment is a plant called purslane. Portulaca oleracea is the Latin name. We've used it before here and there, but we're using it in more of a potent amount in the clinical product. And I'm just referring to some notes I was writing down. It is a really potent antioxidant. It's a great source of gamma-linolenic acid, as well as different minerals, beta-carotene. Another option, specifically getting back to vitamin C, is you could take a look at using a product like our earth-sourced Powerberry serum, which has about a dozen different berry extracts in it, all of which are varyingly good sources of vitamin C. So it could be more of that indirect route. Might be the ticket for you. If you haven't tried Power Berry Serum, I think that's one of our unsung hero products. It's been getting a lot of good reviews. It's pink, natural color from the berry skins and whatnot in the product. I think it's pretty cool. I find that the color of that serum, it isn't makeup-y at all, but I find that the color of that serum just makes your skin look that much more healthy, even with nothing else on. So it's not a tint, but there's enough of it. It doesn't cover or anything like that, or add shimmer, but it's enough of a color change where if you're kind of feeling like you've got a little bit of a pallor going on, which is common to pale people like me, you might find that that really enlivens your skin with very little effort. Jerry says, hi Brian, just want to say PC really inspired me and I'm going to be studying formulation science at Monash University soon. If I butchered the name of that school, I'm sorry. Any tips for studying this subject? I mean, there's a lot of tips I could offer. I would say really try to hone in on the synergy between different ingredients in a formulation. I would look at various aspects of emulsion technology and delivery systems. The art and science of a great cosmetic formula is knowing how the ingredients work together, how they deliver unique and oftentimes complementary benefits, even though they may be going about their delivering the same benefit via different pathways, and then how they can come together in a formula that has great aesthetics that people want to use, how the role that packaging plays, even the role that marketing plays, because there's a lot, as I know you'll discover, there's a lot of geeky science and chemistry lingo and terminology that you'll bandy about with your colleagues in the lab, but you need to also know how to express that, how to convey that to a consumer. It's looking at test results in a lab, when you're testing formulas and looking at transepidermal water loss and being able to tell somebody, what does that mean? And what are these ingredients really doing? So it's things like that. I would, don't be afraid to look at some older textbooks. Even though cosmetic science is changing rapidly, it can be often surprisingly enlightening to look back at what the thinking was before today, what the process used to be, because oftentimes you'll take a look at, for example, an older process that chemists would use to stabilize a water-based product that had plant extracts, may not be what is followed today, but there could be something about that process that a light bulb will go off in your head when you read it and say, oh, maybe I could apply a portion of this to a problem I'm having right now in the lab and see if that helps. So there's, it's very easy to get caught up in the cutting edge and what's next and, the latest peptides and on and on and on and on and on, the latest delivery systems. But it's equally important to look back, especially when you're new to the game, and understand what the foundation was. How did we get to where we are now? What did delivery systems used to look like? What worked? What didn't? Why don't we use them anymore? Or in some cases, should we go back to them? Should we go back to them? And those are all questions that you'll if you're really into this subject matter, I think you'll have fun getting to the bottom of and talking about, talk to people too, talk to your colleagues, bounce ideas off of each other. Those would be my main tips as you go down that road. I think it's a fascinating area of study, and I hope you do too. Okay, got that one. Seth says, random, but I promised my mom over New Year's I would ask about this. What happened to the 2-minute teeth whitener? Any suggestions of a similar product? We ended up discontinuing that. It was not a consistently strong seller for us. And what was happening was that the minimum order quantity that we had to order from the company that made it for us was too high, and they weren't willing to budge. And what was happening is that over time, the inventory that we had was starting to dry up. The product was becoming harder and harder to use, and we were constantly throwing them out, which we hate doing. Creating more waste. But that's the long and the short of it. Is there are people that really loved that product. Super convenient. It did work. Especially, it worked best if you had mildly. For those of you who don't know, it was a roll, or it was essentially a peroxide tooth whitener in stick form that you just kind of would paint. Not paint, that implies a brush. It was like applying a harder than usual lipstick to the surface of your teeth, but you wouldn't be imparting any color, but the ingredients and the formula would attach to the surface of your teeth, and they would lighten the discolored areas, like from food stains, even tobacco stains, things like that. So I am not aware of a replacement product. I haven't looked for a while, so I'm not saying there's nothing out there. Might be worth searching. But there are all kinds of home whitening kits, as I'm sure your mother is aware of, that you could look into, including many that are available at the drugstore. There is a limited, they all pretty much use the same ingredient or a variation of that ingredient, because there's just a very finite amount of ingredients that are approved for home use to lighten teeth, and that actually really lighten teeth. So yeah, that's why we no longer have it. That's why it's gone. But there are definitely people out there that miss it. Karina says, "Hi Bryan, hugs. Oh my God, you did it. Congratulations. I am in that same boat with Paula on niacinamide, and I know she wants to make a 20% niacinamide." Yep. Yeah, Paula tested this product. She was our proof of concept. And in the earlier stages of the development of this product, we were just like, well, if she doesn't like it, if she doesn't notice that it gets her to where the 10% niacinamide stops because she has these advanced concerns, then we're not going to go forward with it. And it was never about, again, just to reassure you, it was never about replacing the 10% niacinamide booster. It's very much like we have different strengths of vitamin C, we have different strengths of AHAs and BHAs. We want to make these options available so that regardless of the extent of your concern, if there is a good possibility, a good to great possibility that we can help you solve that issue, improve that issue, potentially eliminate that issue, depending on what it is, we want to be able to offer the products that can do that have the best chance of doing that. But on the other hand, yes, I agree that it can make it harder to decide, but we try as much as possible to narrow it down for you so you have a better understanding of who the product is best for. Okay, Marlowe's happy about the 20% niacinamide, excellent. And this product doesn't feel grainy, it just has a really nice feel to it. It's not identical. It is not identical to the 10% niacinamide booster in feel. It's similar, but we had to do some more formulary tricks in order to make sure that the 20% niacinamide remains suspended and remains stable through the life of the product. So that impacted how it feels. But I suspect some people who use the 10% niacinamide booster and decide to try this may find that they prefer it. And it is also fine, in case you're wondering, to use them at the same time or use one in the morning, one at night. Okay, moving on. Did I miss Megan's question? Oh, wait a minute. Yep, wait. Okay, Megan. Megan S., is it okay to layer multiple forms of vitamin C, aka a 15% L-ascorbic acid serum, and then a cream that contains, say, 10% tetrahydrate? Yes, absolutely. I think that's fine. I think that you can get enhanced benefits that way, not only because of the different ways those forms of vitamin C work, but another interesting point to consider is that a more stable form of vitamin C, like the tetrahexyl diesel ascorbate, especially because it's oil soluble, could, at least in theory, I can't think of a study off the top of my head that's looked at this and said, yes, that's exactly correct, but in theory, I don't see why it wouldn't have a stabilizing effect on the ascorbic acid, especially as it penetrates further into the skin. So I think that that's great. As with any combination where you're looking at higher amounts of more bioactive ingredients, pay attention to how your skin responds. The goal is not an adverse reaction. What will you see if you're getting some kickback irritation from vitamin C? It can vary. Before you see anything, you may feel a bit of a stinging sensation. If that stinging sensation is transient, meaning it just lasts a few seconds, I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't necessarily, throw in a towel and say, can't use vitamin C, dang. But if it lingers for several minutes, if it intensifies, and then if it's followed by redness or a feeling like your skin is sunburned but may not look sunburned, those are all signs that you're overdoing it with the vitamin C, and or what you're using it with is just too much all at once for your skin. It can be very easy to get carried away when you're looking at all these different treatment products and thinking that if a little of this is good, then if I do this, and this all at the same time, it's going to be even better. And sometimes it can be, but sometimes it's just too much for your skin to handle all at once, and you need to step back and say, okay, what are the most critical products out of this group to address my skin type and my skin concerns? Start with that, and then look at either alternating, where you use product A and B on Monday, product C and D on Tuesday, and then you go back to product A and B, or you look at separating application of these bioactive products, so using some of them in the morning, some of them at night. Gotta experiment. There's no right or wrong there, and it's often just comes down to an individual reaction, which is why I never give that blanket advice that everyone should do this, and this when it comes to these types of products, because that's going to work for some people, but not everybody. All right. Let's move on down here. Good questions, you guys. Aphrodite says, hello, I have mild rosacea. Can I use vitamin C? If yes, how often? So vitamin C is ascorbic acid. I would say be careful with, because the acidic component could be enough of a trigger for your rosacea. Not all forms of vitamin C would be contraindicated, though, and I'm not even contraindicating ascorbic acid. It's just as an acidic ingredient, and at that lower pH it needs to work. You may find that with mild rosacea, it can trigger a flare-up. You'd have to try it and see what happens, but I think like using a vitamin C product such as our Resist Super Antioxidant Concentrate Serum, which contains a high amount of the tetrahexyldiesel ascorbate. I think that would be an interesting form of vitamin for you to experiment with and see how your skin responds. That, or look for a soothing product. Let me double check something here on the site. Look for a soothing product that contains a smaller amount of, there they are, of vitamin C. I was just checking on a couple. I wanted to take a quick look at our Calm Repairing Serum. Pretty sure that doesn't have any vitamin C, at least direct vitamin C in it. Feverfew, soy, ubiquinone, no. However, as I mentioned earlier, the earth-sourced Power Berry Serum, which is super gentle as well, you could try that because all of those berries are delivering some amount of vitamin C. We don't know exactly how much, which is why we're not making a percentage vitamin C claim for that formula. It's really more about how the berries work in synergy for antioxidant protection and just generally creating healthier skin. So that's what I would steer you toward. Oh, where did we leave off here? Let's see. QU. I'm not even quite sure how to even begin pronouncing that. QQQ? Hi, would you recommend vitamin C or azelaic acid as the main ingredient to fade post-blemish marks or brown spots and discoloration? Either one, or you can use them both. They work via different pathways. for both of those concerns. Azelaic acid has anti-acne qualities and anti-inflammatory properties that pure vitamin C does not. So if it were me, I would try both either at the same time or just experiment with one first and see how you do and move on to the next one. If you are actively breaking out and dealing with post-acne marks, azelaic acid would be my go-to to start. Rachel, how much vitamin C is in the Niacin? Would it be a good option for someone with rosacea? The ascorbyl glucoside in that is in a lower amount. I believe it's around 2%. So yes, I would say that that would be a good amount for rosacea. Although generally speaking, because the niacinamide can be tricky for some people with rosacea at that amount, the niacin, which is kind of an offshoot of niacinamide having the amide portion at the end. It's a different molecular structure, but there's some similarities. But the niacin in its free form has been known to cause facial flushing. If you've got rosacea, your face is doing a lot of that on its own. You don't need to put anything on the surface that may make that worse. I'm not saying that's what niacinamide does, but I'm saying that for some people with rosacea, it could potentially trigger that. That's one of the frustrating aspects of rosacea is that even ingredients that are generally recognized as safe and effective can cause a flare. Even the most, I could show you a plant extract that's got paper after paper exalting its anti-inflammatory soothing properties, and you try it when you have rosacea and boom, you've got a flare. It's incredibly frustrating. It can make shopping to find the right products trickier, but that's just the name of the game when you're dealing with that skin concern. And one more reason to try to keep it under control with the right prescription topicals, which you get from your doctor. Okay, Jerry asks, how would you compare 3-O-ethylascorbic acid with other vitamin C derivatives? Why do I see Japanese cosmetic lines frequently using it over others? Well, the ingredient was developed by a company out of Korea, South Korea. There could be that, just in terms of wanting to support raw materials coming out of that part of the world. The most compelling research on 3-O-ethylascorbic acid is from the supplier. And of course, there's an inherent, you could certainly argue there's an inherent bias built into that. However, in this case, having reviewed those studies personally, not like the company came to me and said, Mr. Barron, they're available online. They were well done studies. They were fairly well done studies. They were able to show how that form of vitamin C is more light stable. It is more compatible in different types of formulas that aren't necessarily so pH dependent. So in terms of how I'd compare it to other derivatives, I would say, I think it's accurate to say that 3-O-ethylascorbic acid is a more stable form, more versatile to formulate with form of ascorbic acid. To the best of my knowledge, just thinking back, I don't think that form is fat soluble, oil soluble, I should say, like some of the other forms, which some formulators would look at as a limitation for various reasons. I'm almost 100% certain that it's a water-soluble form of vitamin C, just like pure ascorbic acid. So there's no reason not to try a product with that and other forms of vitamin C. So I would just caution everybody not to get too hung up and worrying about what the best form of vitamin C is. They all have a lot of positives, and they all have a much shorter list of I don't want to say negatives because that implies that they're bad, but weaknesses. Let's say weaknesses, which is true of pretty much every cosmetic ingredient in one way or another. Okay, Zoe says 20% niacinamide. I thought niacinamide was effective at 5%, so no need for higher percent. 5% niacinamide is the amount that studies have shown people, well, even like 3% can start getting you some improvement in skin tone. 5% is really more your starting point for discolorations and for acne. 4 to 5% for acne. we felt that given niacinamide's safety profile, given its affinity for skin, how well it penetrates, and the fact that it's water soluble, that a 20% amount could be just the ticket, so to speak, to really push those stubborn concerns to the results level that people want but weren't quite getting with the other levels of niacinamide that we offer. I think it's a really interesting formula. I can see a lot of people would be curious to try it who are using the 10%. Do I think you need to run out and buy this one if you're loving the 10% niacinamide booster? Short answer, no. Longer answer, it really comes down to whether or not you are developing or starting to see those more advanced concerns that are really more about what happens when the pore starts to lose its underlying support structure, its laxity. We've got another ingredient that's unique in the clinical formula is meadowsweet. We're using that at an efficacious level that supports what the research has shown in terms of its inhibitory effect on an enzyme that is in skin that triggers excess sebum production. So we're hoping that some of our more oily skin customers who are also dealing with stretched, lax pore issues, maybe that orange peel texture, and those flesh-colored bumps that are related to excess oil or just having oily skin, that the meadowsweet ingredient will help with that. That was one of the distinguishing ingredients we found that is not in the 10% niacinamide booster. Not to say that you couldn't have some results from that one on oily skin too, simply because of niacinamide's beneficial effect on helping to balance sebum. That's another one of its bag of tricks. Okay, a few minutes left here. What else do we got? Ellen says, hi, Brian. When I use the C15 booster, the hand that I use to apply the serum with it turns orange, and I smell a metal ironish smell throughout the day. Is it possible that my skin can't handle PC's vitamin C? There could be some chelation going on because of something else that is either a residue of another product that's on your finger. The smell of it, I'm not quite sure what to tell you in that regard. There could be a compatibility issue between the product and your skin. And I would want to play detective, or rather have you play detective and experiment with using another vitamin C product from a different company that has a similar or identical amount of vitamin C and the same form of vitamin C, and to discover if you have that same response, or if it is perhaps something that is more unique to the way your skin responds to our product. So I can't answer that right now, but if you're game for trying something like that, maybe you wait until your current bottle is done, and then come back and let me know what you found out, or call our client services team and let them know and say, be sure you tell that to Brian, because they can just email me. Pedro asks, will the 20% be available in the UK? I can answer that for you right now off the top of my head. I believe so, but I'm going to double check something. The only place we can't sell it is Japan, because they restrict niacinamide at 5%. So yes, that would mean yes, it will be available in the UK. And probably Paula's Choice India at some point. Let's see. Jerry says, Drunk Elephant seems to be getting into trouble because of their infringement on L'Oreal's vitamin C patent brought from SkinCeuticals. How is PC's different from the patented formula? I wasn't aware that Drunk Elephant was having those issues. Our formula was developed in-house, and it was developed with full knowledge of what L'Oreal had patented. So I'm 100% certain our formula for the C15 is not in violation of anything in L'Oreal's patent. So I'm not I don't want to speculate on what's going on with Drunk Elephant there. This is the first I've heard of it, but hopefully if there is an issue, they're getting their ducks in the row. Those guys know what they're doing. So I'd keep the faith. All right, let's see. Nisepi says, sorry, off topic. Is there any product that is safe to spray on after makeup to cut down powderiness, meld everything together, and that doesn't interfere with my sunscreen's effectiveness? I don't think it's a huge no-no if you're using like one of those water mists, like those Evian atomizers that just produce a super fine mist, and you just kind of do this really lightly, and then you can kind of like smooth out any areas where you may have a little extra powder very lightly. I don't think that's a big deal. I would much rather see you do something like that than use a setting mist type product that sprays extra film forming agents like the kind used in hairspray on your skin that may have some other ingredients that left on the skin can, or alcohol for that matter, can start to break down the sunscreen. Now, does water break down sunscreens? Yes. Typically, though, you need to be immersed in it or otherwise drenched in it for a prolonged period of time before you really start getting that degradation. So that is why I'm saying a sheer mist of an atomized product like the Evian water. I'm sure there are others. I think Avene has one. I don't think that would be an issue. That's about the extent that I would suggest to experiment with and not have that concern that you're breaking down your sunscreen. And again, fine mist, and then just pay attention to the areas where the powder is accumulated, and very, very lightly with a sponge or a brush or even a clean finger, smooth that out. You don't want to rub. YT Newbie says, hi Brian, how can you combine niacinamide, azelaic acid, and vitamin C, retinol in your skincare routine? I would love to incorporate them, but I don't know how. It really is a matter of the texture of the product and then how many products, excuse me, I always know it's getting towards the end of the show because my throat gets dry. The texture of the product and then how many products you're comfortable applying at one time, because depending on the formula, you may not find all of these ingredients in one or two products, or if you do, you may find that the amounts that you want to use aren't equivalent in that one formula or two formulas, because we can't fit everything in one formula or even two. So there's no reason you can't put those ingredients on your skin one after the other. They don't need to be separated, these during the day, those at night. So again, it really, let's say it comes down to texture and personal preference. Let's say your niacinamide and vitamin C products have more of a fluid texture. You put those on first. Your retinol product, let's say it's more of a lotion texture. That would go on next. Your azelaic acid product, maybe it's kind of a lotiony cream or a lightweight cream like our 10% azelaic acid booster. That would go on last, because the general rule when it comes to layering is you put the lighter textures on first, followed by the heavier textures. It is also perfectly fine to split that up, and maybe you're using the vitamin C with niacinamide during the day, and you do your azelaic acid retinol pairing at night. That's the approach I would take, not because I'm concerned about using all those ingredients at the same time, but because I just like having fewer products on my skin during the day, because I'm normal to oily skin, and I'll put on whatever I think I need to at night. I really don't care how many layers of stuff I have on at night. It's getting washed off in the morning. If I go to bed with a shiny face, it's cool. All right, a couple more questions here. Let's see, who haven't we talked to for a while? Thoughts, this is a good one from Carrie Allen. Thoughts on people making their own vitamin C serums at home. I know there's a lot of DIYers out there, do-it-yourselfers. I admire the aplomb and the ingenuity. It isn't that you can't make a vitamin C product at home. It's just knowing the formulary percentages, knowing how to keep the ingredients stable, dealing with the chemicals that you would need to establish a pH, which is typically sodium hydroxide or similar, ordering those ingredients in their pure form and dealing with them in your kitchen can be very, very tricky. I would not recommend it. Pure sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide are caustic on skin, again, in their pure 100% form. In the minute amounts that you would use in a cosmetic product, they are not going to have anywhere close to that effect on your skin. But it's those issues, and then knowing how to combine everything, and then the hygiene that comes in. You know, how are you going to sterilize your packaging? How are you going to ensure that the vitamin C that you made yourself is maintaining its potency throughout the life? I mean, are you going to do little vials? There's just a lot of variables. So can you get the ingredients to make a very basic ascorbic acid, aqueous solution in your own home? Yeah, you can. Should you is another question. And I'm of the mindset that it is best left to a professional formulator, best left to a cosmetic chemist who knows exactly how to put these ingredients together, who knows how to make sure that the vitamin C gets to where it needs to go. It's one thing to put 2 or 3 ingredients together and shake it and say, woohoo, I've got a product, I've got a skincare product. But if you haven't done anything to the bioactive ingredient to ensure that it penetrates to where it needs to be, to ensure to help protect and preserve its stability, and that you're really actually going to see a result, it can be just kind of a guessing game as to whether or not what you've done will really work. That's my spiel on the do-it-yourself vitamin C. I would much rather have somebody put together a DIY facial oil. Get a bunch of non-fragrant facial oils, play bathroom chemist, mix them up, create a texture between the different oils because they have different molecular weights. You know, the more saturated the oil is, the heavier it's going to feel. That's why monounsaturated grapeseed oil feels so much lighter than coconut oil. Do something like that instead of trying to dealing with a more acidic product and making your own vitamin C. So, okay, I will do one more question, then I've got to run and make my guacamole. I have a get together tonight. Let's see. I'm not quite sure what she's asking there. Yep. Okay. Okay. That's too complicated to get into right now. I don't like the peptide. Duly noted. All right. I think I was looking to see if we had one more vitamin C question that we could end the show with, because I do like ending the show on topic. And I'm not seeing one. Oh, wait a minute. Here's one. Christopher. He says, do you think the silicone-based ascorbic acid products like C25 are as effective as the proven water-based ascorbic acid, vitamin E, ferulic, and combo? Yes, absolutely. I do, because you have in a non-aqueous product, it is easier to keep the ascorbic acid stable, and you don't have to worry about pH impacting the stability one way or another, because you could only establish a pH in a water-based product. So what we do with the C25 is that we use the ascorbic acid in a silicone-soluble powder form. That all gets blended together at high shear, so you have this really kind of, it looks thick, but then it silkens out to a cream texture on skin. It doesn't have a whole lot of slip to it, but that's by design because it's meant to be a spot treatment. I use the C25 for a little patch of melasma I have over here, and I've seen some really great results with it, and I'm seeing even better results compounding it with the niacinamide, the 10% niacinamide product as well. And I'm sure I'm getting some results as well from the retinol products I use, because retinol plays a role, and the azelaic acid. But I definitely notice I can ascribe a lot of the benefit to the C25, because I notice when I am out of it, and I've stopped out of the product, not out of my mind, which happens. When I'm out of the C25, maybe for 4 to 6 weeks, I just haven't purchased another tube. I noticed that the dark area starts becoming more apparent, whereas when I use the C25, it kind of keeps it at bay. There you go. Anyway, on that note, I will say goodbye to you guys for this week. I'll be back next week. I'm going to have to double check and see what next week's topic is, if it's ingredient or product category focus, but we will talk more skincare. I hope you guys come back with your questions, and thank you so much for joining me today.